Hey everybody, I'm Sara Wiseman. Today we're working on the lesson, Are You in Charge? And I'm just going to read this to start us off. Are you in charge? Don't be lofty. Don't be righteous. You have been on both sides of the coin in many lifetimes. Know this clearly. It is not yours to forgive. This is not your role. Who is in charge of another soul for walking on their soul path? It is only yours to feel compassion for both the self and the other who are part of one. And I really like this message because it teaches us, or it offers this idea of no matter how good we try to be, whatever that means to you, and all the ways that can be created, in all the ways that we can think we know how things are going to be, in all the ways that we can have spiritual practice and attend to that. And I would also add in all the ways we can sort of play around with that idea of law of attraction. None of it is really going to have an effect on the soul path that you're on. Letting go of this idea that we in this lifetime can control it is really useful, and it really creates a different perspective or a different way of looking at the experiences that you have. In older stages of evolution, where we were perhaps working with earlier Puritan times, where this idea of, or before that, the religious times where we were taught you have to be good, you have to follow the rules, you have to abstain, you have to have this sort of very narrow goodness defined by other people. And if you did that, you were assured, a place at the table, or in the gates of heaven, you would be welcomed, or you would just be a good person. And so all of those ideas have kind of dropped away. Certainly society as we know it now is not particularly concerned with any kind of moral or ethical way of living. That's just the reality. You just go on your phone and you're like, there, it's all there. There's no one big force saying, here are the rules to be good. The 10 Commandments are great rules for society as a whole, but we are not seeing that played out in our culture at this time. We're just not. It's like no one's following those. And I'm not saying that we should follow those exactly. I'm just saying that those are broad rules that probably make sense, and the society is not doing that. So we can kind of let go of this idea that if we're good, we're going to be rewarded, because obviously lots of people are not being good, and they're having just as much, success or income or pleasure or whatever it is as the people that are being good and struggling. And then we look at this idea of then the next idea that came after this idea of sin and punishment and being good, and then you'll get into heaven. And the next idea that came is like, you can co-create with the universe. You can use the law of attraction to bring everything you want, and then you're this powerful being who's creating your reality. And I think a lot of us have lived with that for a while and had perhaps some small level of success with working with that. But in reality, lots of terrible things happen to, quote, good people, right? We all know this. And we can attempt to use law of attraction as much as we want, and it still might not work out that way at all. We can be living peaceable, happy, meaningful lives, and still really rough things happen. There's lots and lots of suffering. So if we're not in charge, then what or who or is in charge? How do we look at that in a modern sensibility outside of this idea of, God as the punishing father is one idea, or God as the punishing deity that we have to be afraid of. If we're not in charge, you and me, who is or what is? And what I'd like to suggest is that it's collective consciousness, and it's not certainly collective consciousness from humans. We don't have a great enough collective consciousness to make that the universe run. Like, we just don't. But if we take this idea that everything in the universe has, some people use that word intelligence, some people use that word awareness, connectivity, oneness. I like that word consciousness. To me, that sort of speaks to the general idea. And then we can sort of pay attention to, okay, if there's this sort of oneness intelligence that's always at work, if there's this sort of consciousness that never goes away, like it can't be eliminated, it's infinite and eternal, then how do we live? And how can we harness into that consciousness for our own benefit or our own awakening? And I would say that probably we can't harness into that consciousness for our own benefit if we are applying the rules of societal success. If we are looking for money or attractiveness or fame or popularity, we cannot tune into universal consciousness and create that. Or maybe we can for a very short time. But what we can do is tune into consciousness as a way of lifting our own awareness and a way of sort of paying attention to everything that's happening around you, and then beginning to move in the direction that it seems the universe, this intelligence, this consciousness, is attempting to move you. And I loosely use the term, I sometimes call it law of flow, or attaching to flow, or following flow. When we start to notice where the consciousness is going, here we are, part of oneness, and then this little river of something begins to happen in our awareness that seems beneficial, not beneficial in terms of outer, but in terms of the inner, our inner selves, it seems beneficial. And we just can follow that. So we're no longer trying to be in charge or even thinking that we're in charge. All we're doing is paying attention to what is in every moment as the what is changes. This is just an idea for you to consider, work with. I found it really helpful. It takes away a lot of the stress of trying to get it right or thinking we're doing something wrong. It's just like we just pay attention as best we can. We can only pay attention as best we can based on our awareness at that moment or our understanding at that moment, but that's all we can do. We just pay attention and we follow. We'll talk more about this, and you can find me at sarawiseman.com. We'll talk more later. Thanks for listening.